Well, this is a bit different. Hello everyone, my name is Sen, welcome back to Crouch Block, and for today's video we're going to be going over Batman Arkham Origins. Typically when people talk about this game, it's very much in the perspective of the ugly sister of the Arkham franchise. Much like Dark Souls 2, except I think Dark Souls 2 is much more enjoyable than this game. And that's pretty much the reason why I avoided this game like the plague initially. This was actually amplified by a retrospective I watched from Micah Edmonds that I referenced quite a bit. Mike has made a few Arkham videos over the years, and while I'd recommend all of them, the very first was the push that I needed to get started on my own work. I actually told myself I wouldn't really write about these games because there's so much in the retrospective that I actually agreed with that I felt I couldn't offer anything. After everything was said and done, the only thing I felt I could offer was a sort of freshman perspective at Arkham Origins because I've never actually played the game. Some time passed where there was a sort of shift in mentality where I would play games even though they were perceived as poor just for the sake of trying them and see how I actually felt about them. I mean, look at The Last of Us Part 2. Everyone was so pissed at the game before it even came out and they didn't even give it a chance initially. I know some people that still haven't played it. And I mean, after I played it, like in spite of everything, I thought the game was really good. It's actually even a game I want to revisit at some point, but I don't know when. My name is Sen, and welcome to my retrospective of Batman Arkham Origins. Okay, to give a little bit of context to this video actually wasn't supposed to be a retrospective. It's actually supposed to be a podcast, and I hate to throw someone under the bus, but I've already thrown them under the bus. Cody and I were supposed to have a podcast where we both went through Arkham Origins, came back and compared notes on a podcast. Cody was going through the game on PS3. I was going through the game on PC. I actually did happen to finish the game, and while Cody did get close, he didn't quite cross the finish line. People are busy. We all have lives. I don't blame him. But I didn't just want to do nothing with my notes, so here we are. This retrospective may be a little bit less detailed because I intended to take vague notes for the sake of conversation on a podcast. The notes were supposed to be open-ended, so there was room to talk about things. Batman Arkham Asylum, City, and Night were all produced by Rocksteady Studios, while Batman Arkham Origins was produced by Warner Bros. Games Montreal and Splash Damage. Out of what the internet has told me, Splash Damage was responsible for making Dirty Bomb, Gears of War 4, Wolfenstein Enemy Territory, and Brink. Now, Warner Bros. Montreal worked on games such as LEGO Legends, Batman Arkham Origins, and are actually in the process of making Gotham Knights, which I'm sure all us Arkham fans are keeping a close eye on. When I found out who made the game, all I could think of was why. Why is Splash Damage working on this game? Up until I remembered, this game has an online game mode. It's very possible that they also worked on the AI behavior for enemies wielding weapons, but that's just speculation on my part. I couldn't find too much about the game. And speaking of not finding too much, normally I like to find a budget for a movie or game that I'm talking about, but in this case I couldn't find one. What I can tell you is very similar to Arkham Knight, this game sold 7 million copies, which is very surprising. Arkham Asylum sold 9.5 million and Arkham City sold 12.5 million. For a little bit of context, Skyrim has sold 20 million copies. I would say these games have done rather well for themselves. I was looking for interview footage about Arkham Origins to see if I could find anything valuable to talk about or bring up. I did happen to find an interview with senior producer Ben Mates. Lots of good buzzwords to tick all the boxes and get people excited, promising things like new enemies, content, gadgets. And yes, while I would say there are new enemies and content, I feel as if the gadgets are more lackluster.
I mean, what was absolutely important to us is that it feel true to Arkham and that it is our game, that it has new content, it has new gadgets, new enemies, newness that makes it feel like a new experience, that you are getting plenty of systems and stuff and content to sink your teeth into, but all of this being framed very carefully with this sort of fanatical attention to, is it Arkham, right? Are we creating something that is our Arkham quality? Are we creating something that is true to the Arkham franchise? And obviously I am biased, but I believe very sincerely that we absolutely have. The true test is when, fans will get their hands on the content themselves and they'll be able to say for themselves, have we done justice? I think we've done think we've gone above and beyond doing justice. I think we've created a game that is absolutely, deserves its place within the Arkham franchise.
Yes, there is new gadgets included in Batman's loadout, but nothing that makes any substantial enough impression to actually stick in my mind. The most standoutish would be the shock gloves, which is a gadget that is gained by defeating the electrocutioner in the main story, and is actually infused and integrated in the core mechanics of not just the combat, but the interaction of the puzzle side of the game as well. Now, I want to share a different bit of presentation from Sefton Hill, the producer of Batman Arkham Asylum, City and Night.
You're now playing the game, you can now see the game and play the game, and you have a coherent game, and you kind of have a decision to make about where you're going to focus your energy. You have some real standout features, and these are the things you're really excited about. You've got a good feeling about these, you think these are going to really help to sell your game, but at the same time, the press are getting excited about these. So these are the big standout features of the game. But you also have weaknesses. These are maybe features that were more work than you thought they were going to be. They're features where you've looked at other games and you're behind the competition in these areas. It's kind of natural to look at your weaknesses. You've invested a lot of time in these areas already. They're the lowest scoring area of your game, so it makes sense that that's where you'll put your effort. So Rocksteady's strategy, where possible, has always been to do the complete opposite of this, and is actually focus all our energy on the strengths. The strengths, the standout features of your game are going to be the things that get you noticed. They're going to be the things that provide the memorable moments for people. They're going to be the things that set your game apart. And they're going to be the things that people really enjoy in the game. Another interesting thing here that we'll often do is when you look at the weaknesses, we will often just design those out. We'll basically look at those and go, look, that's just going to be too much effort to get good. Why are we even spending that effort in that area? Instead, why don't we just not do that feature? Or another thing we'll regularly do is combine features. We'll be testing 3, 4, 5 different gadgets out, and we'll look at those and go, well, we like this of this gadget, this of this gadget, and this bits of this gadget, so we'll combine them together, throw away the rest, and combine those ideas together to give us the best overall game.
The idea of focusing on your strengths and cutting ties with your weaknesses in development is an extremely interesting approach. I feel conventionally there would be some pooling of resources to iron out the weaknesses, and while I feel the design philosophy of cutting out weak portions of the game would fly around the making of Arkham Asylum and City, so many games that are released in this day and age are working on giving every player something they can enjoy regarding choices within game or playstyle. I think with this we can move on over to the mechanics. It's an Arkham title. If you played any of the other games before or after this, you roughly know what to expect. Considering that Origins pulls a ton of assets from Asylum and City, a Batman title typically focuses on the combat, stealth, detective work, and exploration. The exploration feels a bit cheesy to say because naturally in any game you'd have to explore to some capacity, but you can't forget the gliding and grappling from one rooftop to another. I can't say for certain, but the glide feels less effective in this game compared to Arkham City, which is strange to me because they had all the assets from Arkham City. They do happen to pair this lackluster gliding with the grapnel to make it up for it in some capacity. This is going to fuel into a point later, but I was really missing Arkham Knight with this. In Arkham Asylum, we didn't really get to experience it too much except for very specific locations, but in City it was really incorporated with things because we were no longer suffocated by the asylum. But somehow Origins takes a step backwards with this. My enjoyment of the gliding comes from the ability to just soak everything in for a moment. It was perfected in my eyes in Arkham Knight, allowing you to go faster and higher than ever before. You don't really get any height from the glide in this game. The only thing you're actually soaking in this game is how good the buildings look, and you can't really tell because all of it's covered in snow. Alright, let's briefly touch on the stealth. Moving on to the stealth segment, everyone knows by now that stealth is far from my favorite thing within games. I think it's fine, I can appreciate it for what it is, but I'm more of a guns blazing kind of guy. Now, with Batman games, the stealth does happen to be a bit different. Typically, the stealth, you have to navigate through areas without being seen, giving the option to take out enemies, much like the stealth segments with MJ and Miles in the first Spider-Man game. To be honest, I don't remember if I brought this up in the Spider-Man Miles Morales retrospective, but there is straight up no mandatory stealth segments in that game that I can think of. It will imply pursuing a stealth approach, but you straight up just don't have to. You're a superhero. Hostage situations should exist. There are some in the very first game. This game's stealth has a bit of a different flavor than normal by being the thing that gives your enemies nightmares by taking them down one by one. Batman is a straight up predator. Lastly, the combat. I don't know how I keep putting myself into the situations where I have to talk about such similar combat, but these games are the ones that kind of set the bar in the first place. I made a mistake initially talking about Spider-Man's combat being strike and counter, which is actually strike and dodge. This combat is strike and counter because Batman hits his opponent after dodging. I can't remember if there's a legitimate tutorial outside of the button prompts that pop up. I know in Arkham Knight there's augmented reality training, but for the life of me I can't remember how they did in other games. Now, out of the many years of playing Arkham titles, I've gotten fairly competent at being part of it. It's become second nature, a bit rhythmic and extremely fluid. The combat initially in Arkham Asylum is a bit slower and a bit more grounded, but by the time City rolls around, it has taken a significant leap in evolution and damn near perfected in Arkham Knight. Now, I can't say I 100% remember what the combat in Asylum feels like, but out of what my heart tells me, Arkham Origins has a worse combat to me, falling below Asylum, which once again puzzled me because you had everything you needed from Rocksteady. My main gripe about the combat is the overall lacking of impact that the standard hits have. This is where the electrocutioner gloves come into play. Because you gain them and they become incorporated into the combat, when you do have the shock gloves activated, I would say my issues are alleviated. But it was solved by something external. You still have to actually get to that part of the game before the combat starts to feel good. The biggest strength in the combat is the group encounters, of course, and amplified by the variation in enemy types. You got standard thugs, they try to punch you. You got dudes with knives, shield dudes, shooty pew pew dudes. You get the idea. The core combat is fine, but it's spiced up by things like gadgets and dodging and brushing your enemies with your cape to tickle their nose. Different things are required to take down different enemies, and that's important. Batman games typically ask for an overall mastery of the core mechanics so you can take down your enemies efficiently. When you get comfortable and confident in this combat system, you find yourself in this zen state of mind. It's really cool, actually. I haven't seen it done as well in any other game before. Now, regarding the boss fights, they're hardly the reason I come to these games. Sure, they're there to progress the story, but the boss fights are never really the strong points of the game. I did want to list off a couple things that were notable through my boss fight encounters. First things first, the fight with Killer Croc. I had a glitch in the game where he turned invisible, and that definitely made things interesting. Hell of a glitch, might I say. The fight with Deathstroke was alright, I guess, but I didn't enjoy the weird grapple sequence or the mashy sword guard. It was a little bit too cartoony for my taste. The Copperhead fight was by far my favorite. It plays on the strengths of the group encounters and contextualizes it as Batman being affected by her venom, only to end with Copperhead becoming your girlfriend that drank a little too much. Firefly was actually pretty cool to me. It broadened the vertical axis of the combat, which Batman doesn't really have to deal with all that much. So personally, this was a nice little change up for me. The fight with Bane sort of focuses on the stealth aspect. You're trying to buy time and wear your opponent out. It was very easy to abuse the stealth in this portion of the game, allowing me to reset Bane's aggro away from me. I like boss fights. I really do. I'm a frequent Souls player, and I understand why boss fights are here. It would be kind of ridiculous if you could subdue the big bads like the normal goons, but they're just not all that enjoyable. From this point, I'm going to be a little bit more all over the place with some of my points. First things first, it's a little too convenient how many problems Batman can solve with the shock gloves. It's very much like the Venom Punch in Spider-Man Miles Morales. So many things happen to need a little bit of power to be operated. What if the electrocutioner wasn't here? What would have Batman done? I understand this feature is original to Origins, so they wanted to push and weave into things as much as possible, and boy, do they. Performance issues. This game would refuse to run smooth on my computer at points. Some play sessions it would be totally fine, and others it'd be extremely choppy, dropping frames left and right. My computer's more than capable to handle Arkham Origins. Cody also had performance issues that he did tell me, and he was playing on inferior hardware, so I imagine that was pretty fun. This game took the choice to take a more artistic approach to the Arkham series, but there's always the thought that they could have done a little more. If you're going to try to be cinematic, swing for the fences. In every game, they hinge things on the duality between Batman and the Joker, but they really lean into it with this game, treating it as some sort of romance from the perspective of the Joker.
And then you meet someone who changes your life, and you feel that you don't know who you are anymore. Isn't it funny how one little encounter can cleave off little pieces of your past, deform your memories and persona to rethink your whole identity?
We got one of the few chances to play as the Joker in this game, and it was really bad. You're literally walking into a combat section. It's completely uninspired. One of the things that I really like is that I intend to enjoy any sequence with the Mad Hatter in it. It's essentially a copy-paste of Asylum Scarecrow segment, but I enjoy it regardless because this is the only other time we see something like this. After all this time, I can't really remember anything of the environment because there's no character to it. In Arkham City, every section of the map drew your eye, saying boss fight or main story mission this way. They took all that away and covered it up in snow, and I can't remember a damn thing about Blackgate itself. I like when the bridge was destroyed and they don't just magically patch it up when you beat the game. I do like the idea of using an Arkham City map, but I'm not a fan of it here because you're a smaller studio. You should have focused on fleshing out Blackgate itself and giving me a reason to actually care about it. This is Arkham Origins, so some of Batman's first outings. It was actually pretty refreshing to have Gordon not be his BFF in this game. I actually wouldn't have minded something like this in the Batman movie. The final fight with the Joker was extremely poor. Gordon was saying that any of his men would have just killed the Joker, but damn, Batman was straight up brutalizing the Joker. Speaking on the Joker, I would have preferred if this game was actually about the fake plot instead. Assassins that are working for Black Mass to hunt down the Batman is just so much better to me. Having Batman slowly pulling the rug from under Black Mask in his operation just hit a bit of a better note. If you're going to include the Joker, just make it like a radio signal about an accident at Ace Chemicals. I would have liked a similar focus with the Riddler as well. Give me a sort of radio signal about a crime scene involving the Riddler. Speaking on the Riddler, I know that he's in every other Arkham game. It's pretty rare that I complete all the Riddler missions because it's just so strenuous on the play clock, even though the Arkham games tend to bring out the completionist in me. It's just tedious. The cool thing about the Riddler was actually the Riddler goons. It gave you a reason to fight on the streets and not just stay on rooftops the whole time. The thing that I found that was interesting is once you complete all the relays, he calls you the riddle. The storyline of Anarchy started off so cool to me. He was presenting himself as a sort of voice of the people to fend off corruption. He sees himself in all this having some kind of moral high ground, diluting himself into believing he's doing some kind of good. He plants 3 bombs for Batman, telling him to do what he will, but we're the frickin' Batman. Of course we're gonna defuse them. The encounters themselves are just timed group encounters. You don't really have to do anything special to defuse the bomb, you just kinda gotta punch it. After you dismantle all the bombs, you take on Anarchy himself, which is just another group encounter. Anarchy's just offering support this time, which, I mean, it's a little different, but taking down Anarchy himself is just nothing special, which cheapens the experience of this mission. Within the core mechanics of the game, there's the investigation aspect. I listed in my notes. They all happen to be ridiculous, and I have no memory to why that is. Crime scenes might not be interesting to play, but it's more important based on the actual motives of what's happening. Andrew Carter murdered someone. Something massive was thrown at a victim, something that maybe a normal person wouldn't be able to lift. Was this perp on Venom? That would have been cool. Actually, you know what? That would have been really cool. A side mission where you find someone getting in on Bane's Venom. That would have been so cool. I think this is where I had the biggest problem with this game. I think the biggest problem with this game is my romanticizing better situations and better ways to tell the story. I always think to myself, well, they could have done this. It's interesting and different that the Batman's a bit more aggressive in his behavior, just generally more willing to strike someone in the face first before asking questions. It makes you wonder how he got to the point of where he is now, but I guess eventually becoming Kevin Conroy will do that to you. This is Arkham Origins. It's okay if you play to your title a little bit. Yes, I know in the Arkham games that people are typically pretty familiar with the Batman's origins. Bruce Wayne. Parents got killed. I am vengeance. It would have been interesting to see the Batman's first couple of nights out, even before becoming the Batman. He's getting started. Show his stumbles. Show how he finds himself in the Batman. Once again, this is Batman Arkham Origins. While it was said to me that it's not about the origins of the actual characters as much as the origins to the relationships and ties of other characters, I would have still appreciated a proper origin for things a bit more. I would have actually loved a moment to take part in the identity of Bruce Wayne, or maybe if you were going to avoid being Bruce Wayne, have a mission relating to Dick Grayson and his parents being murdered. That would have been amazing. Tell me how the Batmobile's out of commission because it's missing a tire. I think I'm just making myself more mad. Subtle nods to us Batman fans. Oh, I would have loved it, personally. And maybe I can't speak for everyone. I can't say for sure that everyone would have liked the game that I would have liked. I think Batman stories need to be brave enough to tell a story without the Joker. Oh, I mean, and if you're going to tell something about the Joker, like, take the idea that I had with the radio signal and expand upon it as him being the Red Hood. Like, that would have been so cool to me. You're doing a chase mission with the Red Hood. You're trying to chase him down. You lose him. but you see a bit of red cape stuck to the railing. A railing that is broken and leads into a vat of acid. I mean, you build up so much with the Joker. You have a misleading plot with the whole Black Mask thing, and then you make his downfall nothing special. You just beat the crap out of him. That is not the way to deliver that. I think it's okay to have things not wrap up perfectly, to leave some loose ends, to tie into future games that already exist. There were other things I wanted to talk about as well on the podcast, but I just can't happen to remember them because it's been months now. I remember destroying Bane caches, I believe, and there was stuff with the Penguin and his like drug stashes weren't very good. I believe they were just group fight encounters. I mean, all in all, it was a Batman game. I got told a story. I had an alright time. I didn't hate the game as much as I would have thought, but it's still only a 5 or a 6 out of 10. It's just okay. And that's me looking past all the performance issues. The story you told me isn't one that's going to stick with me, other than the fact that I think about the Arkham series rather frequently, and in turn I think of this game. I'm at this point okay with never playing this game again. If after seeing this video and Cody does want to hit me up and talk about the game to any capacity, I'm more than willing to hear him out if he has anything he wants to mention. But, yeah. Alright, well, I think that's where I want to wrap it up. In the description, there's links to my main channel and my Twitch, as well as maybe a couple of other things, maybe a Patreon. Yeah, if you guys found this video interesting in any capacity, let me know in the comments below, and if there is a podcast to be made, I will let you guys know in the future. Anyways, I'll see you guys later. Peace.